All right, welcome to Bitcoin Core App Design Call number 94. We haven't had one since July 17 because I think people have just been on vacation a little bit. Things have been enjoying summer, which I'm going to do next week. So I'll be off for 2 weeks. So if someone else wants to host the call, you're more than welcome to. But nonetheless, on the design side, we've made a little bit of progress here. Let me share the link with the call notes. And so we can talk about the updates to receive in activity screens. I think on the code side, the wallet creation was just merged into the application. So if you download the latest main file, you can create a wallet. You can't do anything with it, but you can create it. So that's cool. And then I don't really know what else. Maybe Johnny can give an update on the dev side. And yeah, what else would you like to talk about? What's going on?
I'm just coming in after a while of being off for 3 weeks, so I'm just catching up. I might ask questions that you might have spoken about before, but yeah, that's me.
Just a one sentence update for you. So we did the test as you've seen for activity and receive, and there were very little issues with it. However, we later expanding the design, we're still kind of hanging on some UI details, but they don't change much in the flow. So I don't think we need to verify the design once again. But then when we implement it, I think we're verifying it once again. Yeah, so that's it. So
Nice.
we're now polishing these two screens.
The activity and receive.
Yeah, close to finishing, I guess. Christoph already merged some of it into the docs. So it's going slowly on.
Super nice.
Yeah, I think once the MVP. So if we're working towards on the dev side towards an MVP, right? Then with the MVP doing thorough testing is probably a pretty important thing. But I'm yeah. Johnny, how are things looking? So Johnny, Harold, and I had a bit of a catch-up call. How things are going on the dev side? Johnny, is anything new from your side at the moment? Or
no, not really. Well, we did start using a project board on GitHub, so Harold and I got our tasks on there. We're focused on right now. I'm focused on updating the wallet selector to match your updated design, Christoph, that you did the video of a while back, and so I'm working through that. And Harold is starting the activity page right now. So yeah, that's where we're at the moment. Working on catching up and getting some of these new wallet pages filled in, at least the initial sort of layout for. And there was also some really good comments for the create wallet flow. So going to look at addressing those after I update the wallet selector here.
Cool. Can we see that project board? Should we link it from the design docs as well, so it's accessible?
Yeah, I think. Oh, you know what? Harold shared it with the developers. I'll get that shared in the
sneaky.
Yeah. So we'll get that shared.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think it's helpful.
Yeah, we're gonna try to get G and Pablo's using that as well. So then we'll have better visibility into current tasks.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I also cleaned up our design project board a little bit, but I think we kind of have to keep revising it. Yeah, that'd be really awesome. If Harold's working on the activity screen, that's just something we just update the designs for, so we should definitely sync on that one. And I think from because it's very intricate, the whole thing. So I think that'd be really good. Maybe a video would be helpful too. It can be asynchronous sharing there. Okay, anything else, or should we hop into those activity? I guess one thing that I wanted to, as I was cleaning up our project board earlier a little bit, was we have these huge milestones, like 1.5 is like received, 1.6 is payment request, whatever. And I think now we need to get more granular. For example, how does fee bumping work in transactions or so? Like that's a very subflow that we haven't touched at all. So I think those big milestone issues and tasks are not going to serve us very well for much longer. That means we get into much smaller tasks, and then we're going to have a lot more tasks floating around, which are a bit harder to manage. So I'm going to try to do my best to kind of do a lot of that managing. And then if you want to help with the design, it's probably more so going to be like figure out something specific. Right?
Okay.
So I feel like we're getting into that.
Later, maybe you can also take a look at send. I mean, I haven't worked much on it, but I wanted to discuss maybe the multiple recipients flow, because I also did, like 2 years ago, I did some designs for that, which were basically based on your Monero idea. So I just want to take a look and kind of discuss. It needs to be, updated and refreshed and all that stuff and make better. But I wanted maybe to just take a look if it's a good direction, and so I can improve it.
Okay.
Just a question for, sorry.
Go for it.
A question for Jakob. In terms of the activity, so there has been a prototype that's been created, it's been tested, and then there have been iterations made on the prototype based on the tests.
Yeah.
Christoph has now merged that into final designs.
Yeah, although there are still probably some small changes. We're gonna see them, I think. We're gonna take a look at them.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, okay. So then let's hop in, and I'll try to give an update on the, like you said, activity and receive stuff. Okay. So I feel like it's kind of simple in the end, or maybe it's just simple now that I spend like 5-6 hours looking at, and my brain has morphed or transformed around it or whatever. So we have a request form where I'm creating a request, right? And in there we have an amount, which one of the decisions there, one of the points there was having this little unit selector on the right instead of having it on the left. Then the names of these fields. So this is the discussion here, and I annotated that in the design docs as well. The use of the label is weird. I'll just repeat it real quick. The label gets attached to the address that I create, that's my address. But the label is something gets attached to both the address and it gets sent to the other person. So if I label, if I want to send you something, so I'm going to label my address Mo, right? Because I'm using that to send something to you. However, when I share my payment request, that label gets sent to you. So you get a payment request that's labeled Mo. It's like, okay, what are you going to do with a label that's your own name? Not really useful for you. And on the other hand, if I label my address Christoph, so when you get the payment request, it says, oh, this is from Christoph, right? He wants me to pay him. Then my address, all my addresses will be labeled Christoph in my own wallet. So it doesn't make much sense. And to clarify that, we're splitting that into two. So the one that gets sent to you and the one that gets attached to my own address are separate things. The question is just, what do we call those? I think that's the only question, right? I think the logic kind of makes sense. It's just, what do we call those?
That will, because currently in Bitcoin Core, there's a label, and if you create a payment request with label, then it's on this address book automatically, right? So that would require to change the architecture of this whole behavior, right? Because if we don't change that, then if the label is this your name, so you'll type Christoph, then it will be added to address book, and every item in address book will be Christoph, right? So
yeah, but I
it's a
don't
good.
think we actually have to, because internally we can connect either one of those to the address book, right?
Okay.
And instead of label, which is not really clear to a reader, like, okay, what am I labeling, and how does this work? It's just very generic term. We can be more specific, right?
So in that design, note to self kind of works as an address book.
Yeah. So
I mean, it can be.
note to self could be recipient's name, or we could put a little info button there. Or the whole point is that there's something in there that's for you, that's being kept in your wallet, that you can reference later. And it could be a name, it could be some ID, it could be some like cold storage or toxic exchange, or I don't know, whatever you want to put on there, right?
But there's also one problem, I think, that like if someone imports a wallet with labels, then they will always, can those labels be translated as a note to self? I mean, you know what I mean.
So
So if
I
someone
think
imports a wallet,
uh,
they won't have. Yeah.
I'm looking at my traditional banking app over here because that's the thing that comes most to me. And it's you basically enter in the amount. This is for sending, but I don't know how transferable it is to receiving. So you just enter the amount, you enter the name of the receiver, which then you have the option to open up an address book. So name of the receiver, then the option to open up the address book. Then you would enter in their bank account number, which would be the Bitcoin address. And then you would add something they call an omschrijving or betalingskenmerk. And that is basically, that's the information that the receiver gets. So you put in like an invoice number or, something like that. So in this case, it would be your name. It would be your name. Then you would have where message is, you would have the name of the receiver's name. And then that then linking off to give an option of address book. And then even the note to self, I think you wouldn't even have. You could have it then. But the message and the note to self is going to be the receiver's information. And the message would then open up the address book. Because then you're requesting from that person. So it's automatically going to save the name of the person. You can pull the name of the person in from the address book. Am I making any sense here?
I'm not following anymore. Sorry.
Sorry. Okay. Sorry.
No,
I'm talking to myself.
the thing is,
Okay.
it is kind of intricate, and we're tied to how Bitcoin works, and also how this stuff is defined in BIP21, right? And
Right.
BIP21 does, for example, use like, for example, the name of the recipient, whatnot. So and then we kind of have to make sure it's backward compatible, and it also kind of makes sense. So I think the simple act of splitting app doesn't really cause any technical things. The only thing is that your name will not be saved anywhere, but it doesn't really matter anyways, right? Because it's just your name for the other person to know, right? So they can see it in their wallet in the future. So
I'm thinking of. No, Stephen, go.
I mean, I'd really just be curious to know how many how many wallets actually even support these features.
Mm-hmm.
When I was doing the Bitcoin QR.dev website, I realized that I was putting label and message in many of my example strings, and I realized that a lot of wallets were, I don't remember names off the top of my head, but I just remember testing it and realizing there were some inconsistencies that I observed with how different wallets parsed those fields. So I think that probably a majority of wallets out there on the market probably don't even read both of these fields. Like you probably have some that are capable of differentiating between label and message and ingest both of those pieces of data. Then you probably have some that interpret one of them or confuse them both for being the same thing, or just interpret one and just completely ignore the other. So, I mean, it's one of those things. It's like a cool thing. Personally, I'm like, I don't worry about it near as much. You have to support it because it's in Bitcoin Core right now. But I mean, it's one of those things where I think the majority of wallets probably just support the message field. I like the idea of label just being like note to self because that's kind of what it is. So.
But it's public. That's the problem. I also thought label. I was convinced label is kind of private because you use it. Well, I think I use it, and I think a lot of people use it for like coin selection. But no, it's shared in the URI, so it's not public.
Sure.
And
right? What I'm worried about, I'm not sure if you can import label. Like if you import wallet, if you can import labels. I'm not sure, but
yep.
I'm worried about like if you can import labels and we change the architecture of this, like the user will see, for example, your name, like the user will see something which is meant completely different under a different label, right? So I don't know, user will see your name under notes to self, for example, or whatever, or the other way. So I'm kind of afraid of.
It's a small thing. I mean, it is kind of a mind bender, as simple as it is, right? And we don't really have context books yet. Maybe with silent payments or so, that's something that can become more formalized or so. So how about if this is an interesting topic to you, read through it, think about it, and come up with a suggestion. So we don't take over the whole. Unless you really want to talk about it here, we can continue.
I just mentioned I love this one that is here. Although maybe 3 inputs is a lot, but otherwise I think it's good. If we can kind of solve this potential inconsistency with importing and kind of like we use. I don't know if it's solvable, but if you can do it, then I would like this.
Yeah, so I actually think this is something that's easier sorted out in written format than in discussion, because there's some complex logic there where if you just kind of read it and think about it, you can kind of follow along. But in conversation, you kind of easily jump back and forth between things. But yeah, I'd also like to have maybe Harold and Johnny or so give input from the technical side. But okay, let's continue. Address type is available, but it's in this ellipsis field here. If you really need to change your address type, then this is what it looks like filled in. Then the other thing that we're trying to do here is in Qt right now, a payment request is almost a separate object than is a transaction. But we're trying to basically say they're kind of the same. Payment request is a transaction that's just not been paid yet. So we make them look the same. It's like payment request looks like a transaction, except that it's almost like it shows a loading or waiting to be completed kind of state. So the layout's the same. The options are a bit different. A payment request you really want to share, a transaction you don't really want to share. And they both show up in the activity list rather than having separate screens for stuff. So that is a design decision that's also in the design docs there. Then here, I don't think I changed. The only thing, Jakob, I think that I changed from here was on mobile that the QR code is shown by default, but it is not on desktop. I think that should be possible, just different use case. For the tooltip here, we had an existing one that I used instead of the one that you proposed. I forgot where this was. It was somewhere around the file. And then
I used the system ones, so like Mac OS system ones. But yeah, if there's native, I mean, application tooltip.
So there's a difference between the hover tooltip that shows up on hover, gives you a little bit of information, and one that confirms an action for you. That's like, ta-da, it worked, right? It's a little bit more in your face and satisfying. Then, yeah, if the QR code's not shown by default, we didn't have a design for this. Or, Jakob, you may have had one. I've just put it in an overlay because it's desktop only. So it's not as huge with copy and download options. This here is the minimum payment request when you haven't filled out any information. But if you want to, you can still add name, add a message, add note to self, or whatever we're going to call this stuff now in the context menu.
I like this very much. This is an alternative from the first one, if I understand correctly, because here you're not like forced to add in all of the information.
Well, this is so after you fill out this form here, then you get to see this. But here you've entered information, and here you just haven't entered anything, right? So like if you didn't add a name, it's just not going to show that field or and say you didn't enter anything or empty or so. It's just that's just
Can you show
screen.
Can you show desktop QR one more time? Okay, download copy. Okay, fine.
Yeah, there's probably some stuff I missed there, so feel free to just leave a ton of comments or point out things.
This screen makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I added share there as well, but I guess if it's on the main, it doesn't need to be on the QR.
See, this screen that Christoph has in front now, this one with like, this makes a lot of sense to me because, you know, Bitcoiners are by nature privacy focused. So the question they're going to be asking themselves is do I want to add in my name? You know, and then we also have to inform them that if they add in their name, how public is that going to be? And so there's other considerations that come in there. But this option here just feels like, you know, they can choose to add in as much information as they want. Whereas if you open that page and then you just see all of these entry fields where you have to enter in information, you feel, I think, by default that you have to enter in this information and that you have no choice in the information that you provide. Because when you see a form in front of you, you automatically think, oh, I have to fill in all of those fields. And then often you get the option of saying, this is optional and this is optional and that's optional.
It's tricky because all of them are optional.
And in this
I mean, we can add like optional in brackets, but then all of the fields would have it. So we kind of
here's the question. If I feel like, you know, even labels sometimes and having like optional and little asterisks and stuff, they're a little bit old school.
It's like very old school.
The button is active. That tells me I can press it. If I couldn't press it and move to the next screen, it wouldn't be active, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, you know, if you look at lots of mobile UIs, it's like some of these affordances where like Donald Norman or whatever his name is, he would like freak out and tell you like you're the worst designer ever, are actually okay. And kind of people kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
People will figure it out. People are so tech savvy. Sorry, I don't know if one design is one other person's. I'm coming in here totally new.
Let me clarify it real quick. So when you go to receive, you see this form and you can just press go. You don't have to fill anything out and you get an address, or you fill out everything. And then whatever when you press, then you get this thing here. Right? This is the request that you're sharing, and this is like the static information, and you can access it later again. This is how it's stored, and it's accessible now, and it's accessible later. And then you share that, you copy this, and you share it via messages or a chat app or email or whatever you want. And then once this payment request is completed, it changes to look like this. This is like, oh yeah, I've received it, right? You know, so that's kind of the life cycle from adding in stuff, it turning into like this request, and then turning into a completed transaction.
So I think for me, these last two screens make a lot of sense, and I particularly like the middle screen a lot. But there's something, for me, there's some mental friction between the middle screen and the first screen, because I get the feeling when I look at the first screen that I have to fill in all of the information. I feel like there's no options. So I would, as a user, enter in my name, enter in message, and enter in note to self, because I'm not seeing the word like optional and things like that. I would almost, and this is sounding highly simplified, if you then have the option to add in name, message, note to self on the second screen, I would almost just do request Bitcoin amount, and I would take away name, take away message. I would maybe even only leave in note to self, because, or maybe even remove note to self, because then the next screen allows me to do all of the above. Um,
So the kind of, so this is what it looks like by default.
yeah, they have to figure out that that 3 buttons does the, yeah.
I had another version of this where there were all these buttons, but it's so most mobile wallets they skip this altogether. They just, you press receive, you see a QR code. The problem is
Exactly.
you receive a transaction then, and you have no idea what it was for and what it was about, and you can't even share it. Like,
Exactly.
you're just sharing an address. Like, why not just type things in? So I mean, we talked about it a
Yeah.
few times. The idea was then to stay with kind of the more linear, formal, whatever way of that the Bitcoin Core works right now, where you create this invoice and you do share it.
Mm-hmm.
And to
I,
encourage people to kind of set themselves up for better organized transaction lists later on and have
Mm-hmm.
something that they can share very easily, that's kind of self-contained, like request for a payment. You know.
Yeah.
yeah,
So then I
it's
think that
our.
this is, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say that it's kind of, we had this idea also. I mean, there are some ideas to show QR code immediately, but we decided to show the form with all the fields because it's just better practice to actually fill it. At
Yeah.
least the label or note to self in this case. Uh, it's just better practice for maintaining a wallet. So we wanted to make it a kind of default to encourage users to.
And it's
And
just
how
one
do
click
we
away, the QR code, anyways, right? You know.
how do we inform the user what's being done? How, so me as a person filling in this information, right now I don't know what information is like publicly on the blockchain, or what if I want to make the payment and I want to just give a donation to someone and I want to be anonymous, or I want to use a pseudonym when I'm donating. So how do they know that if I fill in my name, I fill in my real name, then the receiver is going to receive my real name? Or, like, at this stage, I'm not, from when I look at the screen, I don't know what the receiver is going to have about information they have about me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I first of all, none of it. This is public in blockchain, so it's only
Okay.
public in the URI link. So in the information you share with the sender. So sender sees everything except note to self. In that case, maybe we can add private instead of this. Maybe you can just add word private to note to self, something like this.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I
Yeah.
mean, that's it. I mean, for us, it's maybe obvious, like, oh, no, the blockchain doesn't store any of this, right? But someone might have very valid questions around it. I wonder if this is type of a thing where the first time someone makes a transaction in their wallet, we show them a little bit of a helper screen, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or the first time they make
Mm-hmm.
a payment request. It's like, this is all optional, you know,
Uh,
it's up to you to share this. The only thing on the blockchain will be the amount and the address. So,
I like it because then we don't need to show this all the time. Like, if user learns that, they will not need that information, right? And then kind of it
Mm-hmm.
clutters the UI. So if we can show it one time, that would be preferable.
okay, I'm taking a note in the Google Doc. First time use info about optional fields and privacy considerations. Cool.
Yeah. Nice. These look great. This is nice. The transaction is a big thing. Transaction history, being able to search through transaction history, and by educating users and making that as a standard in Bitcoin Core app, I think it's great, because then it's going to give people the ability to go back and search their transactions easier, and all the rest. So this makes a lot of sense.
Before we get into that, a couple more details. So if you look at a transaction, there's a linked payment request. You can go to that payment request. But what we need to decide is, should it pull out information of that payment request into this transaction? If there's a note to self, if there's something else, message, should it show that here too? That's
Just thinking about that.
probably, I mean,
I was just thinking about that and wondering if I should hijack the conversation down that path, but you did it, not me.
yeah.
I don't know, because I think my default response would be like, yes, if there is a payment request, I defined a label, a message, whatever kinds of fields, then I would maybe want to see that associated with the actual transaction that got confirmed on chain. That makes sense. There's going to be some edge cases, and I don't know how much you want to design about. There's always edge cases, right? And I don't want to like waste your time with like, well, what if this? What if that? What if that? You do have to think there can be situations though. Somebody creates a on-chain address with the label and the message and the BIP21 URI, all that, they share it. Somehow that address ends up getting reused, multiple times. Maybe somebody says, oh, you can donate to this person at this on-chain address. And oh, well, I didn't really want you to share my on-chain address, but you did. Anyways, so there you could foresee a situation where someone creates a payment request with a very tightly scoped label and description. This was for pizza from this person on this date, and somehow they end up receiving multiple payments to that on-chain address that have nothing to do with the original meaning of the payment request. So in that situation, do you want to see the label and message? Maybe not in that situation, but also that's an edge case, and I'm not sure how much it matters. But it could happen.
Yeah, thanks for that. We discuss it a little bit, but we haven't really finalized, like indicating on a payment request, like, oh, there are 3 transactions that match this, or in a transaction, or there are 2 payment requests that matches, or in an address, like this has been used 3 times. Don't do that, or so just cross-linking this stuff. But so we've had some initial ideas, but we haven't really. It's like a little bit of a deep dive. I think we need to do.
I'm also wondering, just this last screen over here, it has the from, and then it shows the Bitcoin address. But if the person who's sending includes their name or any reference information, then
Sender cannot include anything.
Because
only receiver this.
Because this is note, so pizza party, okay, and then this is no, I'm confusing it with receive. Sorry, no, I'm already in receive with my brain, because I'm just thinking if I'm the receiver, this is the receive screen, yes.
Yeah, yes.
It's a transaction it's a completed transaction that's in your wallet. And you have added a note to it that's called Friday Pizza Party. And you may have added that note to the transaction, or it may have come from the payment request that you personally created earlier.
And what if the person added their name to the payment as well?
Which person?
Then the person who's sending.
That's not possible. So your wallet picks up transactions from the blockchain. In the blockchain, there's really only the address who sent it, the address who received it, and the amount. I mean, there's some minor technical stuff, but that's pretty much it. You can get creative with and put in like JSON blobs and JPEGs that some people like to do these days. But generally,
we should display JPEGs.
Generally, the sender cannot put any text information in there that for you to receive.
But then how is the filling of the name in the first screen then relevant? Because how?
So that's simply, so the way it works is when I create this request and I share it with you, it creates a Bitcoin URL, a BIP21 URL. It's like a URL that says like Bitcoin, and there's the address, and there's a label in there and a message and the amount, right? Your wallet picks that up and it displays that to you, that text information. When you press send, it creates a transaction, but in that transaction data, It does not include any of the text information. It only accrues the address amount. That gets sent off to a node. It gets processed by the blockchain and all of this stuff. Then my wallet picks it up again, and it only sees the technical data that was baked into that block.
So the purpose of filling all that information before sending the payment request is for my own internal admin process so that I can go back in a neat, tidy way and search through my transaction history.
Yeah. And so for me, what I want to know is like, I requested money from Mo and it was for the pizza. Okay.
Yeah.
But what
And
you
it was
want to know is like, Christoph requested money from me and it was for the pizza.
right. So then you can view that here. You see the
Yeah.
note that says Friday Pizza Party.
And you want to see like, oh, that transaction was from this person for this reason, and this address was used with, that's Christoph's address, basically.
So that note that we see here on this screen, that information has in no way been transferred through the whole transaction because I'd have to actually enter that in myself, right? If I understand correctly.
So if this is a
Yes.
payment request I made and it's got fulfilled, then yes, I had entered that at some point.
You need to enter it in. You need to enter it in. Okay, it makes sense.
I mean, that's the tricky thing with this stuff. Ideally, when you actually use it, you won't notice any of this. It just kind of
Yeah.
happens to you. But then rationally talking about it when designing this application, coding it, it's just way more difficult. It gets kind of messy.
But this looks great. I mean, it's everything is really clear. So it's simple. I think the most important thing is that it's really simple.
You know, that's the trick. We're gonna have to really. I think we're gonna try it, and we may realize it works or it doesn't work. I think we're.
I'm going to have. I think that we do have standard input fields as the whole UI, design. I know that that's in the main file, but it's just that with these screens, at the top you have those. It's nice and big and bold in that green, and then in the second screen, it's kind of has that same sort of central element, which is almost circular. But then in the first screen, in this series of 3, it's just these forms. It's like I would almost want the amount to be a little bit more in that same sort of fun green format that's on the last one. But
yeah, but you don't get the green until it's Bitcoin in your wallet.
but that's just I'm being really nitpicky right now. It's just
But I'm not. I think we haven't included that in the designs. But when the sender uses URI in Beacon Core, we could attach those info shared with the URI in the transaction screen, right? Like I sent this transaction and it had this attached message and it was sent to this person because that person typed a name. That might be useful actually, I think.
I'm sorry, I'm not following.
Like if I am a sender, right? So I get the payment request, and I pasted this payment request in my Beacon Core to send that Bitcoin, and in that payment request there's this name of the receiver and message, and we can actually display that.
Yeah, of course.
Attached to the transactions, and yeah.
So try the current Qt and get some testnet transactions and send stuff to yourself, send stuff back and forth, create payment requests, fulfill them, and it already does some of this matching. So the functionality kind of exists. We're just tweaking it a little bit to clarify the use case.
Yeah, we didn't because it's a send flow. That's why we didn't prepare a screen for this. But yeah, it's kind of obvious. But then coming back, the question was, should we display those in the transaction? And kind of, I don't know if it's because for most of the time in the activity screen, user will see both payment request and transaction next to each other.
I would
I
hide
wonder if
the okay, but let's go let's make our way through
yeah,
this
okay.
step by step. Okay, so we have, and take your time afterwards. Look at the design docs, look at the Figma file, whatever. So like here's a payment request that has a matching transaction where you can click view transaction paid July 25. Then Jakob found all the screenshots, all these different operating system native share screens. So when someone presses share, we don't just copy a URL, we get the operating system specific requirements, which it shows applications the users has installed. It maybe shows some of their contacts. It's just more helpful. It's actually super
But
useful.
I just added that I think it might be. I'm not sure if it's easy to do it on Windows because I tried to find like a way to include that in the apps, and I haven't found any good resource.
Yeah, and who knows about
I
Linux
think it's
too.
mostly used. I think it's mostly used in Microsoft apps, like the one which they create. So I don't know if it's like easy to include that in a custom.
Well, luckily we have super talented and savvy developers who can figure this out. And then if that doesn't work, we can always ask AI.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's a good technical validation. I mean, this is the design intent. These things technically should exist across most operating systems. Maybe on the technical side, there can be someone who validates this. I'm going to take a note. This technical validation of share sheet integration across operating systems. Okay.
Um, Sorry, I'm just noticing one more. If the payment request screen, where there's the option to add in amounts, the amounts where
Yeah, this one
yes.
where you haven't entered an amount,
Oh, here you haven't entered in the amount. So now you're just sending a payment request, and they can choose the amount that they pay.
which
Yes.
they can do
Oh.
anyways, right? Even if I say
Mm-hmm.
a payment request, I ask for 10 Bitcoin, and you're like, I don't want to send you 10, I want to send you 100. Then you can change that. There's
So
no.
something that I've seen, I think it was in Phoenix or in one of the Bitcoin wallets, where when you create a payment request, there's automatically two options. The one option is you can create a payment request with no amount, but then they're kind of really telling you that. Do you want to just create a payment request with no amount, or do you want to create a payment request with an amount? But that's in just in one screen. So it's just like the first you click create payment request, and then the next screen is then it's two options: create payment request with no amount, create payment request with amount.
That's in Phoenix.
Oh, I think you can just. I think you will by default have like no amount, and you can just add it. But it's a bit different because
I don't remember
in
which wallet that's in.
in
I
Lightning,
remember seeing it somewhere.
like in Lightning, you cannot if the receiver defines an amount, the sender cannot change it. But in Bitcoin on chain, if the receiver defines an amount, the sender still can send less or more. It's
Okay, sorry, we have about 15 minutes left. I want to make sure that we kind of quickly go over everything. So if we
yeah,
could just
let's
kind of
move.
take
Let's
some
move.
notes, and then afterwards, take your time, review it, leave comments on GitHub, on Discord, wherever you feel uh, you're cool with. That would be awesome. Also,
Mm-hmm.
like all these references from other wallets. So this is the receive stuff. Now taking a look at activity. So I honestly don't feel like a lot has changed here. So these are the mockups of all the different transaction states. Something new in here is payment request. So what Jakob already talked about, in the activity screen now we have not just transactions, we have payment requests too. If a
Mm-hmm.
payment request is filled, I don't think we want to show the payment request anymore. We just want to show the transaction, right? Because it's like it's done. Like why do I still want to see that? And you can still access it from the transaction. Some people, I don't know, they may not want to see payment requests. I think we should offer it as a filter. It's like just don't show it, or like a quick toggle between transactions or payment. Something we can figure out. But I do think the
Mm-hmm.
unification of that makes sense. So there's a Jakob, I also wanted to suggest this icon for a payment request. You had the dashed circle, which it gets a little tricky on non-retina screens because it's just like 6 by 6 or 8 by 8 pixels. using this outline triangle is a similar idea because it's like it's always incoming, right? You're always requesting something. It's
Yeah.
a familiar shape, but something to discuss separately maybe too. Time locked here. A time lock indicator is also something that we're not going to have right now, but something I think that went live with the design docs. Otherwise, I don't think anything really has changed here. Jakob, I think I added some of these tooltips. This is the type of tooltip where I don't know if we should use this explicit one with a little triangle. I'm also tempted to kind of get rid of the triangles everywhere if we, I don't know, feels also a little bit desktop old school. Maybe a separate thing to give input on. But I tried to copy over all the tooltips that you've added. I don't think anything has changed here for this stuff.
Can I have a request?
Yeah, go for it.
Can we put those pluses and minuses in front of Bitcoin sign? It just bothers me.
So
I know
that
you can use it both ways.
No, it's every country will have different formatting, and some will be before, some will be after. Sometimes the Bitcoin symbol will be after the number and all of this stuff. So, yeah.
Okay.
These tooltips, they are active in hover state. So if I have it hovered over it, it's just going to automatically show up, if I understand. Or
Yeah.
okay.
So mobile just doesn't work that way. So they have to be optional. The filter by type, I changed it from having to select one to being able to pick what you want to select. Specifically, like if you don't want to see payment requests, you can just untick that one and see all the other ones. And then I think there was we had a bunch of discussion around, I think the address formatting and also the details display here.
This is good. I would keep it early.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so all the technical stuff is by default collapsed under details, and then it's shown in a more compact, smaller way.
That's very nice.
So the screen doesn't get so tall. And something then you have all of these options, which this is what I mentioned that we still have to figure out flows for. How does abandoned transaction work? How does increased transaction fee work? I don't know.
Wow.
And then I think it would be helpful to mock up some of the different states when this is receiving, when this is pending, when this is time locked, when this is canceled or whatever.
Isn't this address too long? I always thought it's too... okay. The one I used was too short, right?
I don't know where this came from, if I added it or if I copy pasted it from somewhere else. I don't really know.
Yeah.
But we have different sizes between, 35 to 64 characters or so. There's a fairly broad range. If you look at all the different address. There was also some discussion about whether all these edit buttons should be always visible or it should be a hover thing. So there's detailed stuff. Please take a look at all these things. And just for a sense of comparison, this is what addresses look like right now. Transactions look like right now. This is what we're going to. This is definitely more compact. You can't really make it any more compact than this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at where we come, like what we have now to what this is, it's a complete like 180. So, yeah. And I like the thing that you can. It's the basic information is there, and then you have the option to open things up more, because otherwise there's quite a lot of overwhelm with that much of information. And just coming back to what Christoph said, so we're on the activity screen. But then back to what Christoph said, within the activity screen, all those other sections, we have to figure out individual flows, because what happens if, is what Christoph just said, ... all those other ones on the bottom left. So would those be separate sort of pop-ups on the screen or semi-short flows? The bottom left, that one at the bottom left.
So you mean the to-dos over here?
Yeah, that one. So yeah, exactly. There we go. Yeah, fee bump, interaction flow, cancel transaction flow. Right. So those are all subflows within the activity user flow, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, honestly, I have no clue. I have not thought about it for a second.
My goodness.
I haven't even looked at it if the current app. I really have no, no knowledge of this at
Oh
the
my
moment. Maybe
goodness.
just my
Wow.
brain leaking or something.
That
I
just
don't know.
that just brings the activity in my brain. When I got on this call, I was just like, okay, the activity screen prototype is pretty much there. But yeah, okay, interesting. It gets a lot more granular.
It is very granular, all this stuff. And with multi-sigs or transaction drafts or test transactions, this stuff will get more. But I mean, that's kind of the real. That's what makes a really good product when all these different states are considered and they all make sense. And
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah,
It's probably also two most complicated, not even flows because there are multiple flows, right? But if it's kind of after we nail that, other stuff, I think will be simpler.
Do we want
What's rest after that?
do we want to include these to-dos in the MVP, or do we say we leave the activity as it is now and we really focus on ironing out send and receive?
as I would not worry about them. Let's actually go through them one by one real quick. And I don't know why these should not be to-dos on the bottom of this page. They should be GitHub issues. So fee pump
Okay.
interaction flow, not MVP. Cancel transaction flow, not MVP. Indicator for address reuse. I don't think it's super crucial. Clarify how payment request info is shown on the transactions page, something we talked about. Yeah, that could be good. Mockup various transaction states to show color and shape coding. I think that if Harold starts working on this stuff right now, I think it would be good to just sync with him,
Mm-hmm.
make sure that logic is obvious to him, so he sets it up correctly and doesn't have to go back to it potentially later. So during that process, maybe we mock up a few more things. But yeah, this really should be GitHub issues in our design
Yeah.
on our
Yep.
design board.
Yep. Cool.
Johnny,
Yeah.
how does all all that stuff sound to you?
Um, this doesn't look too bad actually.
Not too bad.
I don't.
Okay, okay.
I think the activity page is harder from a design perspective than it is a technical one. So
Yeah.
yeah, because you got to fit a lot of information in there, or we just have to.
Good to hear.
I don't immediately see what the major difference is. Is the main difference from before just this details page?
So I think the big things we talked about is the treatment of labels, the combination
Yeah,
of payment requests and transactions as kind of the same, variations of states of the same thing. And otherwise, I think we mostly touched details on, like formatting details
yeah,
on this
yeah. Okay,
screen,
yeah,
and standardizing components like the context menu and just nitty gritty stuff.
So with the current like design form that it's in now, there's been the initial designs done, then there's been prototype testing, and then it seems that there's been another round of design iterations that have been done. Is this then like ready to hand over to the devs, or is there one more round of iterations to be done?
So my sense would be that we pushed it pretty far from the design side. I think it's, and if Harold starts this right now, right, then he should
Yeah.
evaluate it from the technical side and point out anything that's missing or that needs clarification, and then we resolve the final details through that collaboration. I think
Yeah,
that's often
that
a
makes
good
sense.
thing to do, and then we just support development with testing and giving feedback and cheering, I guess, pushing it towards because something always comes up in that process. It's
Yeah.
just inevitable.
Yeah, there's going to be something that's not going to be technically possible, or something that doesn't technically make sense. And
Or you try it out and it just doesn't feel right,
yeah, so the create wallet flow is ready to be tested, from what I understand. And we can go to the GitHub and download that and test that out. I'll try to do that by the end of this week.
Yeah, I tested it and I found some inconsistencies with font weights, but I was actually going to see if I could create a pull request and try to fix those myself. It's kind of a challenge, but
Okay.
we'll see.
Oh, another developer in the team.
Just one of the, just quickest way to get things done is do them wrong.
Right.
Someone will come and try to correct you.
So I'll definitely try to test the create wallet flow and on my side. And is there anything, Jakob, would you like to meet later this week to discuss? I don't know, anything on the research side?
Um, if so, I would propose next week.
Yeah,
But
sure.
I mean, I don't think we like the next thing to test will be sand probably, and I don't
Not
think
clear.
I'm not sure if we need to test this one once again, because we're changing mostly kind of formatting, and we don't change much of the information, very little, and so that was tested and there was very little issues. So there was a lot of changes, but very kind of, as Christoph mentioned, like context menus.
No need to test it again. No.
Yeah. I mean, we will test it again, I think, when it's implemented, but then the changes will be mostly labels, I would suppose, maybe some info here and there.
Nice.
So, and the sand screen, there's still quite a lot of stuff to do before we test it. So I'm not sure on the research side if we need anything.
Okay.
So what's on the design side? Jakob, would you want to jump straight into the send stuff or try to tackle some of those smaller things first? Like I said, I'll be out for a couple of weeks starting next week.
I tried to finish the receive activity, what's missing, I guess. And then in the meantime, I'll like also work on the send
Shall
stuff.
we have a call next week as well? I mean, I'm happy to. Bye, Stephen.
Ooh, alternate request.
Okay. I'm happy to host the call next week and make sure that we have the call next week, if the rest of you guys are also down for that as well.
I'm up to, yeah. Why not?
Yeah, I'll try to make sure Harold gets on that one too.
Yeah. Christoph, do you know if we have a call scheduled already in the calendar for next week, or shall I schedule
So
one?
there is a GitHub issue. I had
Okay.
already set up the next 3 or 4, but then because no one was around, I just took them down. But the issue is there. You just need to update the date and then give it the call label, and that should do the trick.
So right now the issue is closed, if I understand correctly.
No, it's not closed. It's open.
Okay.
It just doesn't show up in the calendar because it doesn't have the call label attached.
All right, cool. Okay.
And it's not in the Discord events tab either.
Cool.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to try to clean up a little bit more of the project board to get all these little issues in there so you can work them off. We'll look out for the dev project board. I'll see if we can link that, try to poke around there a little bit. Okay, so that's just organizationally, that'll be some of the stuff I want to do.
And then Jakob, you're going to do activity, and then...
I'll do the missing, what Christoph mentioned, the missing states of transactions, this payment requests. Yeah, what's missing, this minor stuff. And I try to, I wonder how to do, so I probably copy the design Christoph unified. I added to the new page in this file, which I and Michael worked on, and I add new stuff there. I guess that'll be probably the easiest for you.
It's better to duplicate the main file to continue your work, because then you get the latest components.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm going to poke Harold around what he needs for the activity. Maybe we can create a video or whatever he needs. Basically,
Okay.
I'll try to figure that out too.
And I
Cool.
will try to test create wallet flow before end of this week. I'll find that PR and I will try to test it by the end of this week.
Awesome. And if you could also test it in the current Qt wallet, and the new one, just get a sense of comparison, what options there are, how it works.
Oh, right. So have the current older version open and then, okay.
Yeah, create a wallet in the old
Understand.
one, create a wallet in the new one, just
Mm-hmm.
for a sense of how we're
What
changing
both
things up.
versions feel like. Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Cool.
Awesome. Thanks all. It was good to catch up, and I guess we'll continue chatting in the Discord. Cool. We'll stop the
And if you're
recording.
going to